Hello everyone. Welcome to the virtual class of standard costing. In previous session, I have discussed conceptual framework of one of the most important topic of the chapter, that is fixed overhead variances. Today, I would like to discuss first practical question of fixed overhead variances. It is one of the most important area of the chapter. Let us discuss the question first. Calculate all possible variances related to fixed overheads. The question itself is open-ended, so on the basis of the information provided by the examiner, we need to calculate all possible. There are 7 different fixed overhead variances possible on the basis of the informations provided. Let us refer the data. Particular, budgeted data, actual data. Budgeted output 2500 units, while actual output is 2550 units. Fixed overheads budgeted rupees 1 lakh, against to which actual amount paid is rupees 1 lakh 6000. Budgeted working hours are 5000, while actual working hours 5500. Budgeted number of working days 25 and actual number of working days are 27. As I discussed in conceptual framework, it is compulsory for us to calculate a few basic items before application of fixed overhead variances. Let us calculate all items one by one. The first and foremost step is all about calculation of budgeted rate. Calculation of budgeted rate is possible with 3 different expressions, 3 different methods. Budgeted rate per unit of output, budgeted rate per hour of working, and budgeted rate per day, as we have enough information to calculate all types of budgeted rates. Let us calculate all the rates one by one. Budgeted rate per unit. Formula for the calculation of budgeted rate per unit. Budgeted fixed overheads divided by budgeted output. Check the informations given in the table. Budgeted fixed overheads are rupees 1 lakh and budgeted output is given for 2500 units. So budgeted rate per unit is rupees 40. Then second, budgeted rate per hour. Formula for the calculation of budgeted rate per hour. Budgeted fixed overheads divided by budgeted hours. Budgeted fixed overheads rupees 1 lakh divided by budgeted working hours 5000. So the rate per hour is rupees 20. And third and last, budgeted rate per day. Budgeted fixed overheads divided by budgeted days. Insert the value in the formula. Budgeted fixed overheads rupees 1 lakh divided by budgeted number of days 25. So the rate per day is rupees 4000. Now we need to calculate 2 more items. First, calculation of standard or budgeted hours for actual output. In the given question, budgeted informations are given with some different level of output, but actual output of the company is different. So we need to recalculate, we need to revise our budgeted hours. Let us calculate. It is simple cross multiplication that we have applied at the time of calculation of variable overheads. When budgeted output was 2500 units. At that time, we have expected budgeted hours 5000. Actually, the company has produced 2550 units. So, how many hours are required? With the help of a simple cross multiplication, we can easily calculate budgeted hours for actual output 5100. Same way, we need to calculation of standard or budgeted days for actual output, because the examiner has provided information related to number of working days to us. So in this situation, we are able to calculate budgeted days. Let us calculate. It is simple and similar to the earlier calculation. When output was 2500 units, at that time we have expected to work for 25 days. Actually, we have produced 2550 units. So, how many days required to produce? Similar, you can apply cross multiplication and the answer is 25.5 days. So, before starting calculation of the variances related to fixed overheads, we are in need of budgeted rate per unit, per hour, per day, and again we need budgeted hours for actual output and budgeted days for actual output based on the informations provided. Now we can calculate variances one by one. The first variance is fixed overhead cost variance. We can calculate fixed overhead cost variance based on output or hours or days. It means there are three different alternatives available to us in order to calculate fixed overhead cost variance. And in all three alternatives, your answer remains same. As it's a very first question, I will calculate fixed overhead cost variance using all three methods just for your verification purpose. And it is also advisable to do in the examination. It is also in your benefit to cross-check the data, whether you are on the right track or not. So from this information, from this calculation, you can make sure whether it's a proper or not. Formula: actual output multiplied by budgeted rate minus actual fixed overheads. You can check your table. Information related to actual output is given 2550 units. We have already completed calculation of budgeted rate per unit. Obviously, we are multiplying with the number of units, so we need to apply rate per unit. It's rupees 40 per unit minus actual fixed overheads ready-made given in the table 1,06,000. So 1,02,000 minus 1,06,000. So difference is rupees 4,000 and it is adverse. We need to interpret these 4,000 very properly. On the basis of units of the production, our expected fixed overheads should be 1,02,000, not more than that. But we have paid rupees 1,06,000. So in this case, we have paid rupees 4,000 more than that of the requirement. So when we are paying more expenditure, situation is adverse. Second option for calculation, and it is all about calculation of fixed overhead cost variance based on hours. Formula for the calculation: budgeted hours for actual output multiplied by budgeted rate minus actual fixed overheads. Budgeted hours for actual output. Here we have completed calculation of budgeted hours for actual output, 5100 hours. So insert 5100 hours multiplied by budgeted rate per hour, because we need to multiply with the number of hours. So rate per hour is applicable for the calculation, minus actual fixed overheads 1,06,000. So 1,02,000 minus 1,06,000. So difference is rupees 4,000 adverse. Again, our calculation gives us same answer, rupees 4,000 adverse. Clear? Now apply third alternative for our solution. Basic formula remains same in all three cases. Now we will calculate on the basis of days. Formula: budgeted days for actual output. We have completed budgeted days over here. It's at 25.5 days. So simply just copy and paste over here. Budgeted days for actual output multiplied by budgeted rate. Naturally, we need to multiply with the number of days. So the rate is applicable per day. So 25.5 days multiplied by rupees 4,000 per day minus actual fixed overheads 1,06,000. 1,02,000 minus 1,06,000 is equal to rupees 4,000 adverse. In this way, you can calculate your fixed overhead cost variance using output, hours, or number of days. In any of the three methods, your final answer remains same. It is advisable to calculate using more than one method so as you can cross-check your calculations. Let us move to the second variance related to fixed overhead. It is fixed overheads budget or expense variance. According to me, it is the most easiest variance in fixed overhead because we are not in need of any kind of calculations. Simply refer the question, find the information related to budgeted fixed overheads and actual fixed overheads. Both these informations are ready-made available to you in your question. Budgeted overheads are 1 lakh. Actual overheads 1,06,000. So the difference is rupees 6,000 adverse. Again, interpretation is important. We have decided to pay rupees 1 lakh on fixed overheads. But at the end of the task, we came to know that actually we have paid rupees 1,06,000. So we have paid rupees 6,000 more than that of the requirement. So the difference is rupees 6,000, referred to as adverse difference. It is a negative difference. With this, our second fixed overheads budget or expense variance comes to an end. Third, It is related to fixed overhead volume or output variance. Formula: budgeted rate into bracket budgeted output minus actual output. At the time of discussion of concepts of the fixed overhead in previous session, I have discussed that we need to use different rates at a different point of time. Here, budgeted rate is mentioned, but we need to calculate for output or volume, and even in the bracket, information related to the budgeted output minus actual output is given. It means this budgeted rate is related to per unit. It is a simple logic that both multipliers have same expressions. If you multiply R's with the rate of output, then it's absolutely illogical. So when we are using our data for the purpose of calculation of output, we need to consider budgeted rate per unit. So BR into bracket BO minus AO. Budgeted rate as per our calculation rupees 40 per unit, that we have completed. 2500 units budgeted output, and actual output of the company is 2550 units. So the difference 2500 minus 2550 is equal to 50 multiplied by this 40 rupees. So 2000, and it is favorable. Let me explain the things in detail. This is the matter of output. Our budgeted, our expected output is 2500 units, while our actual output is 2550 units. So here output increased as compared to budgeted data. So when output increased, it is positive sign or favorable sign for the company, and that is why this 2000 is referred to as 2000 favorable. Just keep this thing in your mind. Right now we are not discussing anything for cost. We are calculating for output, and when output is increased, it is positive. When output is decreased, it is negative. So this is a positive sign for us because our output is increased. In fixed overhead variances, apart from mathematical calculation, interpretation is always playing important role. So take care of these things very clearly. Number 4 is all about fixed overhead calendar or days variance. So from the word calendar, it is clear that we need to calculate on the basis of days, right? Now, formula: budgeted rate into bracket budgeted days minus actual days. Here we need to apply budgeted rate per day. Why? Because these informations are given in terms of days. So naturally we need to use this information. BR into bracket BD minus AD. Insert the values in the formula. Budgeted rate rupees 4000 per day. Budgeted days 25 and actual number of days 27. It means we have decided to get the work for 25 days in the month. but we have actually received work of 27 days from our employees. I would like to inform you that we are discussing for fixed overhead variances, and fixed overhead always remains same. It means if your employees are working for 25 days or 27 days, it doesn't make any difference in the amount of their salary. As an employer, you are supposed to pay same amount if they are working for either 25 days or 27 days, because this expenditure is based on time, right? So here we need to interpret these things very properly. We have decided to get the work of 25 days, but we have actually received work of 27 days from the employee without paying any additional expenditure, because the salary is decided per month, and when the salary is decided per month, how many days they are working in a month, it is not the matter to the most. So here we need to think very carefully. We have decided to get work of 25 days only, but we have received work for 27 days without paying any extra charge. So here we have received 2 days of extra work, and these 2 days of extra work without any expenditure. So just think like an employer. As an employer, if your employees are working 2 days more for you without any extra salary, the situation is favorable for you. Situation is favorable, and that is why this 8,000 is favorable. As I said, in case of fixed overhead variances, calculation is based on a different momentum and a different understanding. So it is necessary for you to understand everything very precisely. After calculation of fourth variance related to fixed overhead, let us move to fifth. It is all about fixed overhead capacity variance. Budgeted rate into bracket budgeted hours for actual days minus actual hours. Budgeted rate, budgeted hours for actual days BHAD minus AH, that is actual hours. Now insert the calculation of budgeted hours for actual days first. Without calculation of this item, it is not possible to calculate fixed overhead capacity variance. When working days are 25, budgeted hours are 5,000. For this information, you need to check your question. Budgeted days 25 and budgeted hours 5,000. It means the employees are required to work for 5,000 hours in 25 days. So in 27 days they can work for how many hours? So this is simply a cross multiplication. Now insert the values in the formula. Budgeted rate rupees 20 per hour. Budgeted hours for actual output 5,400. It is nothing more than the cross multiplication. 5,000 multiplied by 27 divided by 25 minus actual working hours 5,500. 5,400 minus 5,500 equals to 100 multiplied by 20. So the difference is rupees 2,000. and this difference is favorable. Again, you need to understand these calculation very properly for the purpose of interpretation. If you expect that in 25 days your employees have to work for 5,000 hours, so with the same capacity they can work for 5,400 hours in how many days? 27. But they have actually worked for 5,500 hours. It means their capacity is to work for only 5,400 hours. But they actually worked for 5,500 hours. It means your employees have worked beyond their capacity, or you can say more than their capacity. When your employees are working more than their capacity for you, the situation is favorable for you. That is why this variance is favorable. Take care of these things very clearly in the examination at the time of interpretation of the variance. In fixed overhead, calculation is important, but the more important item is interpretation. So be very much careful for this. Now, sixth variance is related to efficiency. In this question, IT hours are not given. Suppose IT hours are given, we need to divide our IT hours into two different parts. First, we need to understand these things. Total actual hours. These total actual hours classified into two parts. First, IT hours, that is idle time, wastage of time, unproductive time hours. And second is productive actual hours. Productive actual hours, right? But in this question, information related to IT is not given. And as the information of IT is not given, we are not supposed to classify our working hours into two different parts. Otherwise, we need to classify into unproductive hours and productive hours. At this point of discussion, I would like to put to your notice that efficiency variance is always based on only productive working hours. And seventh variance, that is IT variance, came into existence. But in this question, information related to IT is not given, so we need not to enter into this kind of classification. We can calculate our fixed overhead efficiency variance using two different methods. Let us calculate first fixed overhead efficiency variance based on hours, budgeted rate, into bracket budgeted hours for actual output minus actual hours, BR into bracket budgeted hours for actual output or actual production minus actual hours. Budgeted rate rupees 20 per hour because information is required in terms of hours. Budgeted hours for actual production 5,100 hours that we have completed in the beginning of the solution with the help of cross multiplication minus actual hours 5,500. So 5,100 minus 5,500 resulting into the difference of 400 multiplied by rupees 20. So the difference is 8,000. Now it is necessary for you to interpret this difference. We have to produce in 5100 hours only. But actually we have taken time of 5500 hours. Now just imagine, for the purpose of completing a task, 5100 hours are given to you, and you can complete the task by taking 5500 hours. It means in order to complete the task you have taken 400 more hours. If you complete the task by taking more working hours than that of requirement, it means the situation is negative, that is adverse. So interpretation is more important. Second way of calculation, fixed overhead efficiency variance. It is based on output, budgeted rate into bracket budgeted output for actual hours minus actual output. BR, budgeted output for actual hours minus actual output. Let us calculate budgeted output for actual hours first. Check the information given in the question. Budgeted hours were 5000 and at that time budgeted output was 2500 units. It means you need to complete production of 2500 units by taking 5000 hours. It means if you take 5500 hours, the units of a production would be something different that you can calculate using cross multiplication. Insert the values in the formula. Budgeted rate, obviously per unit, because we are calculating on the basis of output. 2750 units, it is nothing more than cross multiplication. 5500 multiplied by 2500 divided by 5000 minus 2550 units. So 2750 minus 2550, 200 multiplied by 40 is equal to 8000. Again, interpretation with the different understanding. We have taken 5500 working hours, and if we used to work at a standard speed, we can produce 2750 units. Instead of 2750 units, we have actually produced 2550 units. It means we were at the capacity to produce 2750 units, but by taking same time we have produced 2550 units only. So here we have produced 200 units less than that of our efficiency level. When you produce less than that of your efficiency level, this thing is referred to as a negative or adverse. I would like to put to your notice that information of IT is not given of all 6 variances. Let us move to the verification of the data. Fixed overhead cost variance, it is 4000 adverse. Fixed overhead budget variance 6000 adverse. Volume variance 2000 favorable. 6000 adverse, 2000 favorable equals to 4000 adverse. Further, fixed overhead volume variance classified into 4 different variances. Calendar variance 8000 favorable. Capacity 2000 favorable, efficiency 8000 adverse, and in this question IT variance is not applicable. Now check 8000 favorable, 8000 adverse. It is not necessary that these two amount remain same, but coincidence is there. So 8000 favorable, 8000 adverse cancel. So finally 2000 favorable transferred to overhead volume, budget 6000 adverse, and the final result is 4000 adverse. I hope everyone is clear with this calculation. Thank you. Keep watching next sessions in order to understand this chapter perfectly. God bless you. Keep learning, keep growing.